Welcome to Schmitt Tonight. You know, it took some creativity, but the Trump administration finally found a way to turn the American left against asylum. White refugees. After 4 years of valiant cries defending fake asylum seekers pouring in through our southern border, 4 years of cheering as Joe Biden spent your money and a lot of it to send jets to third world countries to pick up as many people as he could find, we are now seeing fury toward the asylum process as 59, not 59,000, literally just 59 South African white people have arrived here in the United States. They came in yesterday. They're called Afrikaners or Boers. They're Dutch farmers who've lived in South Africa for generations. Their families, hundreds of years. Their descendants colonized an essentially empty South Africa in the 1600s while sailing around the bottom of Africa to head to Asia for trade. If you've never been, South Africa is an incredible place. These are some of the pictures of the times I've been there. A spot of land nearly as prime as California, beaches, mountains, wine country, incredible weather. It is an absolutely amazing place in this world, and it is collapsing as we speak. Listen to the rhetoric from a mainstream political party, the third largest in South Africa today.
Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer. Brr, pa, pa, brr, pa, pa.
You've seen that video before, I'm sure. That's Julius Malma. He is the head of the Economic Freedom Fighters Party. That is a big political party in South Africa. And what you just saw is thousands of South Africans screaming to kill the white man, to kill the Boer, at a mainstream political rally at a huge stadium. They want to retake their country from white colonizers by murder, retake the farmland, which is actually an idea that was tried in Zimbabwe 25 years ago by Robert Mugabe's government, taking land from white farmers and giving it to black families. That idea led to starvation and famine. Here is more from Julius Malma.
These people, when you want to hit them hard, go after a white man. They feel a terrible pain because you have touched a white man. Starting with this whiteness, we are cutting the throat of whiteness.
So there you have it. You see why there's a need for asylum. And some are acting on these calls. From 2019 to 2022, there were more than 1,400 farm attacks and murders. The vast majority, like 90%, were committed against white farmers. And the details are horrific. A father murdered in front of his pregnant wife and their small children. A young white farm manager strangled and then tied to a pole. A couple severely beaten, their farm then set on fire. There's a lot of these stories. Almost none of these cases are ever solved because the anti-white South African government has no interest in solving them. Post-apartheid South Africa is heading for the same fate as Zimbabwe met. South Africa's president has signed a bill allowing the same seizures as Zimbabwe allowed 25 years ago, so long as they're done to be more, quote, equitable. Of course, the left's favorite word. Video here shows crosses. You can see them there on the side of that highway. Each of these crosses, and it goes on for a long time, represents a white farmer that has been murdered in South Africa. Can you imagine that? And yet here is how the CNN lefties covered the story last night when just 59 South Africans arrived here on Monday.
Violence does not equal genocide.
That's
so
right.
We need to be really, really clear about that.
So what's the difference between the refugees that they're talking about here and those refugees?
I could guess. I mean, I think everyone...
They're white.
They're white. Thank you.
I think what we see very clearly here, Chris, is a white nationalist agenda at work, and we need to call it for what it is.
That's so deeply and morally wrong-headed and repulsive. These are the descendants of the people who created the most diabolical system of white supremacy in human history, apartheid.
So they deserve to be murdered? They're the descendants of Dutch colonizers from 400 years ago, so they deserve no protection, according to the white idiot on MSNBC. Okay. The current media narrative here in the West is that Trump only wants white refugees. That's what you're going to hear all about this. And that's the claim. It's outrageous, but that's what they're going to say. In reality, he just wants real refugees, people actually escaping death and persecution, things like that. Not the billions around the world who are simply impoverished, unskilled, with no ability to assimilate in our country, who are looking for a nicer place to live. And also not entire populations of failed nations. We can't import an entire country of people, no matter how bad they want us to. And opening our southern border to the world was not asylum for the last 4 years, no matter how many times they tell you that it was. Jaco Kleynhans is a South African native who's been speaking out about the atrocities happening in his country, and he joins us now. Jaco, thanks so much for coming on. American media claims this story is being over-exaggerated. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, that's absolutely not true. You know, we've been talking about this as an organization for the last 20, 30 years, and you've mentioned the statistics now. You know, it's the most dangerous position that you can be in, is to be a farmer in South Africa. There's less than 30,000 farmers left in a country with 63 million people. And I was now for 2 weeks in Europe, and just during the time that I was in Europe, there were 5 farm attacks and 2 farmers killed during a 2-week period. You've mentioned the severe torture of farmers in South Africa. So if you look at this, 49 people that arrived in America in the last 2 days who received refugee status from the Trump administration. These are people who went through really terrible situations of farm attacks, of being persecuted, who lost their land due to land invasions in the northern parts of South Africa. These are people who really don't have any options left in South Africa. I would love for them to stay in South Africa, to live here, to have a prosperous future. But the reality is that they've lost everything.
Yeah, I doubt they wanted to leave. I've visited there, and the country, when it's safe and prosperous, is probably one of the best places to live in the world. And I really mean that. I mean, it's a spectacularly beautiful place and has such rich, fertile land. The leader of this political party, the third largest in the country, has repeatedly called for the genocide of whites in the country. Let's just take a listen to this.
Must never be scared to kill. A revolution demands that at some point there must be killing, because the killing is part of a revolutionary act.
Is there any reaction to this? I mean, it feels like your government does not want to solve the crimes committed against these people. Is there any reaction to that by your official government, or do they just not want to act like it's not happening?
Yes, they're acting as if it's not happening. You know, we've been asking for many years that farm attacks must be declared a priority crime in South Africa. The President, Cyril Ramaphosa, have repeatedly said that there's no farm attacks happening. He told that to President Trump during his first term in 2017 at the United Nations in New York. He recently, as recent as yesterday, said that this is absolutely not true, and these people are just taking chances, you know, to go to America and to get a free pass to travel to America. So they're completely not recognizing this crisis of farm attacks. And I must also just emphasize that it's not only people on farms that are attacked. You know, you have the same kind of violent attacks and tortures in small towns in South Africa. Like you've said, it's a wonderful country. It's a country where we've been for 370 years, but people are persecuted every day. And I think that's a fact. It's a reality. And I'm very happy that President Trump are brave enough, you know, to put this on the table, and that he doesn't fall for the kind of narrative that was put forward by the mainstream media over the last few years.
I want to ask you kind of a tricky question to end here, but it's been 30-something years since apartheid ended. Apartheid was obviously in a country that's majority black. You had a white government, and we heard constant cries about how unfair that was. And now you have the opposite. I mean, the government in South Africa is run by the black population. Is it any more fair in the country, or is it less fair post-apartheid South Africa?
Yes, well, the whole narrative in the 1990s was that South Africa was supposed to become this liberal democracy in Africa, this rainbow nation who will be an example for the rest of the world. But since 1994, 142 laws were instituted in South Africa that discriminate against minorities, especially white South Africans, but also colored and Asian South Africans. And that extends to university admissions. It extends to applying for a home loan. To apply for very basic things every day, to get a contract to do business with government, to get employment. There's very strict quotas, racial quotas in all sectors of the South African economy. The result of this, and I think that's very important to understand, is, and you've referred to the beauty of South Africa, the potential of South Africa, is that our country is becoming a failed state. Infrastructure is falling apart. The economy is not growing. It hasn't grown for the last 15 years. The unemployment rate is constantly increasing. It was announced yesterday that the unemployment rate is now 32.4%. The black people in South Africa are also paying a serious price for this failed government of corruption, of racist policies, and extreme discrimination against minorities.
Jaco Kleynhans, thank you for the perspective from a South African. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You know, everybody's reporting the same stories, the same spin. You turn the channel, it's always the same. But not us. We're different. We report the real news. No spin, just the facts. Turn to us, and you won't turn back.
Tune in to Rob Schmitt tonight on Newsmax.